three committees are intending to be set up. I think I'll request again Colonel Ahuja to sort of step in and just quickly give us introductions of everybody in the in the Founders Committee as well as in the Governing Council, and then we take this forward.
Thanks, Chandan, for that. So we've just started with recording of the meeting as well, so that we would be maintaining the record of each meeting, both at the GC and the Executive Committee level, so that the work to be taken ahead or future members years down the line have the access to what the thoughts from each sectoral basis is there. And I think technology is enabling us to do that today. Again, a big thank you to everybody for joining today evening. I'll quickly, in the next couple of minutes, run through as an introduction to the members here, so that we save time in getting to know each other. But then we will come to each one of you. We have Mr. Gagandeep Bakshi as a founding member, besides me and Chandan. We have Mr. Gagandeep Bakshi is from the finance field in terms of being the director and head of investment banking at the IntelliCap Advisory. Next, we have Shilpa. Yeah, we have Mr. Saurabh Ghosh. He's the General Secretary, Community Friendly Movement, working a lot across sectors in the rural, semi-urban, urban linkages for various community-related projects. We have Mr. Suhas Bakshi. He has been the MD of Kone India, and currently he is the co-founder of Biofuel Circle Private Limited. It's the first platform for biomass bioenergy in India. So 5 as the founding members, and that's where the thought process emanated from. Next, we have in terms of the GC members, and I'll just run through the names here. Self in the GC member, Dr. Vibha Dhawan, who is the Director General TERI. We have Dr. Govinda Chintala. He's the current incumbent Chairman NABARD. We have Dr. Mrs. Praveen Dhameja. She is the Advisor, Skill Council for Green Jobs. We have Mr. Gaurav Kapoor, who is the head of the capital team at the British High Commission, FCDO. We have Dr. Preeti Jain. She is the Director, Business Development and Government Relations at LanzaTech. We have Mr. Prabodha Acharya. He's the head of sustainability across JSW Group of companies. We have Dr. Pramod Chaudhary, one of the leading global biofuels person, the chairman Praj, and I think one of the guiding lights in the biomass bioenergy sector. We have Mr. Parvez Umrigar, who is the MD and CEO of Ever Enviro Resources. Professor S. Dasappa, sir. He has been working for the last 3 decades plus in the biomass bioenergy sector. Dr. Ashok Haldia, the ex-MD and CEO of PTC Financial Services, again has been working in the biomass sector for the last 15 odd years. And Mr. Varun Karad, who's been working in the biomass bioenergy compressed biogas sector. So 12 members as part of the Governing Council as an introduction. All their profiles are listed on the website. So I think what we showed you here would be available. Now, the Executive Committee, and this is where actually the action is going to be, or the action has to be. And this is all of you all on this call. We have Mr. Chandan Goswami. He's here. Mr. Suhas Bakshi, who would be part of the Executive Committee. Next, we have Mr. Saurabh Ghosh, Mr. Gagandeep Bakshi. So all 4 from the founding members are part of the Executive Committee, and Self is there representing in the Governing Council. We have Mr. Shailendra Kumar Shukla. He's the former chairman of Chhattisgarh State Electricity Board. He has been the CEO of Hareda and Creda. We have Mr. Jinendra Jain. He's the group head, Forbes Winca Private Limited, one of the leading boiler manufacturers in the solid fuel boiler, one of the leading companies working in the space of bioenergy solutions. We have Mr. Vibhash Garg. He's the Director Renewable Energy at PwC India. Again, a vast experience in the biomass sector, in TERI, on projects, policy advocacy. He's part of the Executive Committee. Mr. Anand Bansal, a partner at E3 Savers. brings humongous experience in biomass densification, problems and solutions which he advocates towards the densification industry, which now has become an industry which is rapidly growing in India. So he would be contributing towards the executive committee. Mr. Amrit Khattar, he's the director, High Tech Agro, again a technology solution provider towards the densification plants and one of the solution providers in India for automated integrated plants. We have Mr. Milind Patke. He's the ex-executive director biofuels from Bharat Petroleum. He has, in the last couple of years that I have seen, contributed with, I think, passion, heart, and soul towards this industry. And he continues now in his second avatar post superannuation, still working with this segment of biofuel and the biomass related industry. And I think that brings forth his commitment towards what he has done in the last couple of years. So currently, as a structure, we have 5 founding members who are broken up into 1 in the governing council and 4 in the executive committee, a total of 10 members in the executive committee. We are open to another 2 members in the executive committee to make it 12. And we would also have in the future a technology council to come in where technology aspects could be taken up by CBEII when the structure of CBEII would envisage and grow in the future. So what has happened in the last 6 months is, from a thought process of engagement across industry members, farmers, FPOs, solution providers, we have been able to bring uh, marquee individual names, companies, skill sets to CBEII. And I think that's the first thing off the block. And now what we are intending to do or impressing upon your collective wisdom is to guide and take this ahead. So that's where we are. And I think each one of you, we appreciate your time and we expect the ownership of the body to be with each one of you. So I think whatever you bring as far as being the founding team of the executive committee is something which is going to lead the path for this body, for India as a country in the years ahead. And the first committee formation is by seeking your time and bringing it on a nomination basis by people who have the passion towards this sector. But going ahead, I think after 2 years, so the first nomination is for 2-year basis, it would move to a democratic process of election, nomination, and a process to go ahead, so that I think what the work we would do in the first 2 years becomes a platform for maybe us or others to take ahead. So at this point, I will pause. Over to you, Chandan, again for the next phase, please.
Sure. Thank you, Manish. So I think what the intention, as we had highlighted, is to just quickly run through the structure of CBEII, the committees, the charter, the objectives of it. And I think post which I will request if each of you could sort of from your perspective, in brief, give us your thoughts around CBEII and the tasks or your, I will probably request your vision towards CBEII as to what you want the organization to do, how we should take things up, etc. So, but first, quickly, let me just give you a backdrop of CBEII, which I'm sure you've read it through. But what we intend to do here is, the founding committee members have created CBEII. We intend to have a formal office in place of the confederation, appoint a working group. Today, I think each one of us in the founding members is taking out time individually and has been able to work through on the structure, on making representations that we have made on on creating the backdrop of it. But as this becomes formal, we will have a formal office in place. We'll intend to have a CEO and a complete organization to run through it. But between that time happens, today it's the founding committee which is ensuring that everything which needs to be required to be done for the organization is being done. We've also kept the founding member as, since they've been the originators of the idea, to be the more static group which will remain across time period and continue to hold the core structure of CBEII. So to ensure that the balance committees are operating as per the charter is the mandate of the founding committee. As I mentioned earlier, the governing council has been intended to give us the guidance. Each one of us is, I think, fairly experienced, but the governing council members, I think the objective has been differentiated, that they tend to play a fiduciary role for the organization. They keep it that the larger macro aspects of it are pretty much aligned to the charter of the organization, that we are not deviating from the main cause, and they keep the larger governance practices in place. So that's really the, I think in a more macro level, this is really what the GC is intending to do. Operationally, the way they would also function is that they are the ones who will end up approving any plans that the EC charts out for itself and the organization. And they are the ones who will collectively, in their wisdom, approve it or give us feedbacks on how that could probably be improved further. So the GC members activity has been charted out. We'll be happy to share this presentation with you. You could glance through it. You already hold on to the charter. You also hold on to the charter of CBEII, so it will be good for you to collaborate. The executive committee is where we all need to focus our time towards, is actually to work through nitty-gritties of getting the office operating in time, the CEO to be in place, the organization below him to be in place. We define the annual plan, both in terms of financial allocations, but also the activity chart, exactly the representations to be made, the issues to be taken up, speak actively to our members, which will now incrementally go up, see the challenges that each of these subsects face every day, and then how do we collectively take it up to the right stakeholders and the policymakers. So that's largely going to be the division of work between us and the governing council. We have till now also, I'm sure you've looked at the membership plan that we have charted out. This is the sort of the cost structure for being a member. And we are now going to be more active. We already have a few members who have joined us, but I think this is a sort of activity that we need to focus more of our time today to go forward. I will now request each of the EC members, we can go in a chronological order. I think if I can request Mr. Anand Bansal to probably start the discussion, give us your perspective on CBEII in a gist, and how do you think the organization should take these things forward?
Yeah, thank you. I think I've also discussed it with Munish that we should start making members from the industry, like the biomass briquette industry and the pellet industry, so that we have a good strength, and we should represent them in various government sectors for the problems they are facing. One is the fuel is not approved as a green fuel. So that is one first thing we should take up. And I think already some activities on for that. And the fee for like we have given corporates, large corporates and small corporates, how do we define the MSMEs in biomass sector? Where do we bring them in? That is one place we have to think over, because 5,000 rupees joining fee is the minimum for a association, and 10,000 joining fees and an annual fees of 5,000. So we have to discuss that would that be okay for MSME, because there are people with one machine or two machines who are running this biomass business. So for them, this fees might look huge. So we have to work out joining fees for MSMEs also.
We had an initial discussion today. Monish will update you.
Okay. So these are the points I think we should work on. And first and foremost is, like in the last meeting, the power meeting we had, we were discussing about creating a fuel for this power sector. So there we have to work that what all technologies we are recommending. Like I've recommended that we should go ahead with the briquettes instead of only talking about pellets. So that is one place we can give a push. So that's it for now, which I think I would like to add, and later on more things would come up and I'll keep everybody posted about it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bansal.
Yeah.
If I could request Vibhash, if you could take up next, please.
See, on this, sorry, on this fee structure, I don't have any, suggestion or comment because this is something which I'm looking at first time and I have less idea about it. In terms of what we should do as the member, my focus would be around policy and regulation. And I'm working on that part on a different project, but I think a lot of that needs to be streamlined along with the concerned ministries to make it, to make the entire sector streamlined. I mean, sector has potential, we all know. I mean, we come from that sector. And sector does not have potential. There's a lot, not only have potential, but there's a lot that can be aligned with the sector in terms of, industries, those industries that are consuming fossil fuel for their thermal applications. A lot of that can be replaced with biomass, but there is no push from the government side. So through the biomass paper that we have developed under a different project, that was the push that we will try to get from the government side, and we are seeking appointments from different ministries on that front. That will, I think, help, and I'll be briefing to all of you at the right time on that part. But from my perspective, a lot of that needs to be done so that there are entrepreneurs who would take interest, and there are entrepreneurs who have already taken interest. There is money available for if entrepreneurs want to raise equity, and potential is also there. But something is missing. That's the reason it is not happening at a scale that it should have happened. So one push from the government side will be very, very important, and that's where I think this association should have a larger focus.
Sure. So I appreciate that, Vibhash. I think what we intend to do with CBEII also, and just for everybody to sort of understand, now when we say we need to push government and the policy, you're absolutely right. What we are trying to do with CBEII is to create subsectors or subcommittees under the EC with time to come. So today we don't have really too many members to classify members on the basis of their sub industry. But the idea is that each of this policy push or each of the requirements at each level is going to be different, right? So somebody who's doing briquetting will have its own sets of challenges. Will have X amount of expectations of the government. Somebody who's, let's say, from the aggregation side will have a different expectation from the government. We also have technology providers today. We have Mr. Jain. He comes from the equipment side of things, the application side, let's say a boiler. They would need a different sort of a policy push. So you're perfectly right, and I think we need to do that. What we will be doing with time to come is to create these subgroups, and each of these subgroups, each of us could probably take up the leadership of looking after the concerns around that sector and develop a paper which holistically looks at solution around their challenges. So when we talk about briquetting, one part of it is to probably, like Anand said, why not use briquettes in the power sector? Why are we going after pellets? Fair point. But if you want to really push the briquetting sector, you also need banking support to step in. So you would also need inputs from, from the debt side of it, from the bank to support the off-taker. He's going to be an MSME, he could be an SME. So I think that's what the idea is going forward that we will create. I think once the introductions go through, we'll also sort of give you perspective of what policy support we've already sort of advocated till now. But let's do this one after one. So if I can now request Gagan to step in.
Sure. Thanks, Chandan. So from my side, I think what I would like to focus on is trying to bring the financial institutions to uh, you know uh, arrive at a more feasible solution of financing biomass projects, and I think that's been one of the significant challenges we've seen with the financial institutions and the lending institutions. And I think I would try and focus there, bring as many stakeholders as possible to see what best can be done to make finance available at a more economically viable cost, whether in the form of blended capital, or whether it is equity or debt. But try and see if that can be made more available, rather than it being as a more of a restricted sector today. Can it come under the overall umbrella of infrastructure and get as many as can get cost incentives from that perspective? So that's going to be my agenda on the finance side, and see what I can do on that front.
Thanks, Saran. Mr. Jain, Jitendra Jain, would you like to step in?
Hi, good evening, all of you. I think so far there has been discussion about the finance, about the biomass or the government policy push that we have been trying to do. I think as an executive committee, first we do is, to my understanding, this executive committee should work as a funnel between two areas of work. One is about the biomass source and how we make it more useful, and another is a biomass uses. So these are the two little distinctively different areas where we may have to work. Of course, it requires the finance on both sides. It requires the government policy framework at both ends. But differentiating it, because making sure that the sources are reliable, making sure that sources have the repeated quality, making sure that the sources have a good concentration, density, everything makes it easy for it to become a useful thing. At the same time, we can work towards putting up more on the uses front. So the use per ton of biomass, how much more we can generate in terms of a heat or energy or enthalpy or whatever the benefit to the society that come more on per ton basis, that we can think through. So when we are deciding about the division of the work and all, we can take this into consideration. Of course, I will be very actively working with some interesting ways or efficient ways of using it to generate the thermal energy, because this is what we do at Forbes Winca. But also would be interested that what are the alternatives that we can build which can sustain in time to come. If this becomes a precious commodity, then we should be using it in a mindful manner. So we should work on these two sides of the funnel, and we should become a channel between the producer and the user. That's what I think, so.
No, I appreciate your thoughts. Thanks for that. If I could request Mr. Patke to step in, Mr. Vijay Patke.
Yeah. So good evening to all of you. As Monish described, I was working with Bharat Petroleum last 3-4 years. I have been actively involved in the 2G ethanol and 1G ethanol space, and also working considerably towards establishing biomass supply chain and getting state governments to involve themselves and all that. Now, as an executive member, of course, and before that, now I'm working with GPS Renewables, and I'm now driving the ethanol plant execution along with biogas plants execution. So I'm now actively involved as far as the development of biofuel industry is concerned in the downstream side. Now, whatever discussions we have had so far, I see that there is an overemphasis on, not overemphasis, but there has been an emphasis on power generation through biomass. But I represent that industry where biofuels is now going to take a center stage. And having been involved with the Satat program very actively in last 2-3 years, and very actively over last 1 year, wherein Shri Tarun Kapoor, Secretary MOP, used to take almost weekly review, and I was part of that. I have noted that when it comes to setting up a biomass supply chain, that is where I think most of the entrepreneurs are losing their, steam. And even when we used to have discussions with the financial institutions, banks, Mr. Gagandeep was just talking about financial sector. Yes, very important. They were always worried about how to set up biomass supply chain. And if the biomass is not available, they are not ready to fund the biofuel industry. And I think this is a serious issue we need to take up as this particular platform, that how do we give confidence to the entrepreneurs that they can come and set up biofuel plants based on a biomass as a main feedstock. Because today, when we discuss this with state governments, center government will only give one policy. OMCs will also, somewhere give a lending hand to that and say, okay, well, my market is available, I'll sell biogas. But then when it comes to setting up a biomass supply chain, it is the state government and the agriculture departments of the state governments have to play a very active role. And unfortunately, that particular side, there has been a very, very little involvement. And my own experience with Orissa government is not very good, very encouraging. With Haryana government, Haryana being a small state, IOC did quite a lot, and they have made some progress in terms of making clusters and identifying 100 clusters, and each cluster will give it to a particular plant. At least they've gone ahead some way. But then ultimately, if you have to make biofuel industry remunerative and ensure that anybody who sets up a plant is able to get a payback period of 3 to 4 years or 5 years, which is quite decent. But unless the biomass supply chain is economically and sustainable, and physically the biomass is available at a regular on a sustained basis, entrepreneur will not invest, and banks also or financial institutions also will not invest. So this particular platform will have to do a lot in terms of creating that confidence in the minds of financial institutions, in the minds of technology providers, in the minds of entrepreneurs that look, this is sustainable. And therefore we may have to create some models. We'll have to create some solutions. We'll have to demonstrate that how a biofuel plant can be set up, a biogas plant can be set up based on a paddy straw, how a particular ethanol plant can be set up, or 2G ethanol plant can be set up. So I think towards that, we need to create some solutions where we'll have to show that biomass can be made available on an economically feasible, in an economically feasible way on a sustained basis. That is something, if we can do towards that, I think we would have done a lot of justice to this particular platform. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So I think I think this is where experience, speaks for itself. You've very nicely summed it up. That business model has got various moving parts. If you don't end up addressing every aspect of it, right from the farmer, his problems, his challenging of giving you the biomass, to a supply chain aspect, to a financing aspect, to a technology aspect, and then finally it all fitting well into the into the jigsaw of a business model.
Yeah,
we are successful, and that's exactly what the platform has been intended to do. That we address each of them, and I think if you would have gone through, each of us spoke about our respective, aspects with so clear passion and clarity that if we all sum up this thing and bring it together as a solution, we should be able to solve it. So, you had somebody speaking like Mr. Bansal speaking about the micro entrepreneur. You have Gagan who's speaking about the financial aspect of it. I think Saurav is next due to speak, and I think he's very well emotionally connected on the ground with the farmers and their, I think, challenges that they face. So Saurav, for you now, if you could take it up.
Thank you. Mostly the discussions have is the same thought process that all of us have. But since we are an executive committee team, which is also looking into the ground implementation, we need to step back and also check. There are a couple of bodies which have been created in different parts of India. What they have done, why have they not been able to bring this on the larger forum is something that we need to understand. Second thing is the inclusion. As many people on board, if we can get them, that would be the first thing, because the moment we have attraction of 5,000 people, 10,000 members. We actually become somebody who we want to be heard about. Because there are very practical things which were just spoken about. I think Mr. Patke also said about it, and it's we are all people who have kind of worked on the infantry level, been in the field and seen things. But we need to go back a little bit and see what others have done, or the other organizations which have been created in the same space. Where did they miss out on? How do we bring those learnings into our perspective? Because if they would have done their job, then there was no need for us to be thinking about it, right? So that is one thing. Second thing is the farmer engagement, because unless we have the foot soldiers with us and we kind of create the supply chain, the very fundamentals together, like collection and the monetization of waste at the bottom level, how do we execute anything? Money is of course a constraint, but money is also not a constraint. I've seen that whenever things have to happen, the resources can just flow in. It's not something big. But we need to put all these building blocks together, and since we are the executive people, we should get into action with milestones. Next month में हम ये करने वाले हैं, अगले month में ये करने वाले हैं. So we can quantify things and bring it to the board and say, whatever you thought, we have actually executed it and come back. So what next? Thank you.
Thanks, Saurabh. I think Mr. Khattar is left. Amit, if you could step in, please.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So, very interesting conversations, and we have been doing biomass projects in India. Our company's been doing that for the last almost close to about 38 years. So, the one of the very important aspects which I feel is missing as on date is that there is no integration of different verticals. So, there are most of the things I would say are available out there. So we have some collection expertise available with someone. We have some processing expertise available with someone. Biomass utilization expertise available with people. But when you look at different pockets in India, probably states like Odisha, West Bengal, where you're not utilizing biomass at all. And there is, people feel that they might not be able to sell the biomass. You have places like Northeast where a lot of biomass is available. But again, they are not aware that technology exists wherein they could convert bamboo or any other XYZ material into processed fuel, which could be sellable. So getting all the things on a single platform available, so that at least the knowledge which has been experiences which have been gathered in the past 35, 40 years in the biomass sector in India can be available to everyone across India who wishes to utilize them. So that is one point which I feel could be important. And apart from that, coming from the processing side, we feel that now with the industry growing, we need to have some kind of courses or structures developed for actually having skilled manpower, particularly for this domain when we talk about biomass. So we have people whose expertise lies in running the processing machineries for biomass or running the collection units for biomass, having those things in place and making them available throughout the states. So we have something in collection going on in Punjab, but the same thing if you look at in South India, it's not as efficient or as easily available. So having these the knowledge of it, which different people have accumulated, having it centrally organized and enabling all different states, whosoever wants to utilize those models and that knowledge, they should be able to have access to that. So that is one of the other factors which I feel could be important in ensuring how the industry can grow in a holistic way.
Thanks. I think it's a very valid point, that learning curve that comes in one geographic part or an aspect of biomass. I think we need to play that role also of spreading it across wider to the industry, and that's an important aspect. So thanks for your views. I will request Colonel to step in, give us your views on how do we take this forward.
So thanks, Chandan, and thanks again, everybody, for being here, because time is one of the most essential things that each one of us can contribute. And I think each one of your views are well noted, well recorded, And that's where there are some problem statements, there are some experience suggestions of what needs to be done, and rather than those individuals having to kind of run around finding those solutions, those suggestions as a collective body, CBI would be mandated to do that and take it ahead. And I think that's where the executive committee decision of what needs to be taken ahead, when it needs to be taken ahead, with whom it needs to be taken ahead, which are the kind of beachhead segments, or which state, which industry, all of it needs to be done. And here it would require specific some focus time of yours, which I think Chandan and the other executive committee members would kind of draw upon. And we would, though we appreciate each of your business, but somewhere, at least for the initial phase of first 6 months to 12 months, do allocate that time. That is the request. The second part here is we expect and we want the utilization of biomass in each of the segments to grow. And I think Vivash mentioned some numbers. If the potential is there, why not collectively each of the segment grows right till the resource or shared wealth going to the farming community? And I think that's where even sustainable reporting, sustainable audits, and that kind of a role play of CBI being able to deliver that across projects, across segments, would actually bring sanctity for the decision makers to look at it. So that mass movement creation, I think we would all collectively work towards. And last but not the least, the organization needs to be self-driving, self-sustaining. It is a not-for-profit organization. So I think the way there is, and Anand brought a point which Saurabh alluded for me to amplify. So in the first of the series of the meetings today, what we had decided was to kind of lower the bar. We would allow members to get onboarded by a waiver of the first year of fees to be paid. Only the joining fees may be paid, and the fees of the first year could start from the second year. So that is a kind of a common decision which happened, and this would also allow the GC members, the founding members, the executive committee members to have that lever in their hands to promulgate that the membership base increases, and each of you, like owners of the committee or of the body, please feel free to do so. And if you do feel to take a call of waivers on the first year fees to be given, please do that, and that would get acknowledged by the office bearers when they are doing the process of registration. Secondly, I think it was a common echo across, this is the third meeting of the day, that the base needs to increase and the membership numbers need to increase for somebody, be it state government, be it policymakers, bureaucrats, to take cognizance of what CBI brings forward. And I think let's all uniquely work towards that in our space of influence, and if we can contribute towards that. Thirdly, I think what we have done, and we will show you one slide of certain engagements which have happened with central government, state government, certain specific ministers, policy makers, Director General of Foreign Trade, and these have been based on initial engagement feedback with a few of the executive committee members, governing council members, or even some who are not members currently but bringing this point. So we have taken it up, we have written these letters, we have put them in public domain, and we have also shared it in WhatsApp groups with the governing council and executive committee members. We are also working to put this available on the website so that these could be bases, or decisions which flow out of it would also get acknowledged and would become database or data room for anybody looking at this sector to say that yes, there is somebody which is willing to take up for our cause. So we have written to if you see there is a serial order number which gets put, and we have engaged with Ministry of Finance on GST issues. We have engaged with Ministry of Commerce and Industry on the export of biomass. We have engaged with specifically Karnataka as a space where policy intervention was kind of guided by somebody from the biofuel industry. We have written to the National Energy Policy body, which is looking at that from Ministry of Power for the biomass segment to find voice there. We have gone on being guided by Ministry of Commerce to Director General of Foreign Trade for looking at the export of biomass. We have written to the Chief Minister and various other government entities towards the ban of biomass, which is existing in NCR uniquely. And I think it's an error where they have put everything, but they have left biomass. So we have written to them to make this up. And we are now in the process of formulating a letter for the Commission for Air Quality Management, Delhi NCR, and that hopefully in the next week to 10 days, we should have that letter going out as well. Now, all of this uniquely is being done either by the founding members or Chandan or me in terms of finding time on behalf of the industry segment. But what we would like is CBEII as a professional body to be doing this independently and not kind of impinge upon our each individual's time. And that's where, if any of you feel that there is something which needs to be taken up, please feel free to author it and write it, share it in a Word format, and it will be more than happy, because CBEII is your body for CBEII to take it ahead. Please also feel free to circulate it amongst the executive committee members, so that if there is any point which has been missed out or somebody would like to add certain elements to it, can also get captured. And I think a consensus around 3, 4, 5 members of the executive committee would be good enough for us to take it ahead and begin that engagement going. And please also find time for that engagement, because since you are bringing that forward on the CBEII platform, you need not carry your organization card, but a CBEII platform, you could lead that engagement for that change or policy intervention to come. So I think that's also something we would leave on your tables, on your desk for a thought process. And please feel free to come up with anything in that segment as well. Lastly, I think we have attempted to do something, and rightfully said by one of the committee members that we must look at where similar kind of organizations could have faltered to learn from those mistakes, and we would be doing that as well, and take this ahead at least for the first 2 years, where each one of us is now mandated to be taking it ahead, to hand over the baton of something which is resilient to kind of auto function on its own. So even on the governing council, if you feel there is something to suggestions to come, executive committee working suggestions to come, please feel free to make them and kind of get that consensus going, because that's what we want, a democratic process with this organization to flow. There is also Vibhash here, who has worked on behalf of FCDO on a paper document for biomass in India, and we had circulated that on email as well. I hope all of you have gone through that. At some point of time in the near future, he has consented to make that presentation, as he is doing with various government bodies, various ministries, stakeholders, and he has consented to present it to CBEII as well. So we would be coming back to you and kind of finding a 1 hour slot for everybody to join. Please do join that and kind of spare that time, because it would be, I have read through that document. It would be really something which will open up new avenues, which maybe I had not seen, and I feel many would have not seen cross-functional as well. So we would be doing that also shortly. What we also would be doing, and that's where we need your support, is organizing webinars or maybe even small sectoral engagements. And that's where we would seek mobilization of individual segments of the industry also happening. and taking that ahead. So the basic message is we will have CBEII to be vibrant and moving ahead. And if you feel anywhere that there is a pause, I think please, as the executive committee member, take that ahead and guide for that to happen. If you feel any state you want CBEII to do any activity, central government any activity, again, please lead that, because it is part of your charter, of your duty to kind of take that ahead. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much. Chandan, if there's anything else on the agenda, or if any executive committee member, anything there is, if somebody would like to bring up. And last but not the least, we will request everybody to kind of put on their videos for the first photograph. The meeting contents are recorded, so we will pick up your statement or snippets, and over the next week, 10 days, have it on the social media platform, LinkedIn platform, tweets around it. And we'll also request and support you to retweet or kind of remove it around, so that the vibrancy of CBEII is known everywhere. Chandan, over to you, please.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Munish, for summing it up perfectly well. I think more on the micro part, we will put out a clear plan that we need to have for the next 1 year. And I think it has to be that each of us proposes and suggests from each side as to what do we foresee. So I think we'll need to start meeting a little more frequently. I think we need a good beginning today, but probably every fortnight, if we can schedule a meeting, at least in the initial days, get a charter, get a plan cleared between ourselves, think through the agendas that we think either at your respective area of domain or generally in biomass that needs to be addressed, and then collectively make a singular plan of action. The seminars that we need to have upon the representations to be made across, and take this across to the GC soon. So I think we will, after this meeting, we will come back to you on an email separately to plan the next meeting. But thanks a lot for your time.
I think, Jinenerji, if we could request you also for the video to be on, so that we have a full quorum photograph. Thank you so much. So Shilpa, you need to capture the photographs, please.
Yes, sir. Done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening ahead.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.